Order! Order! Will the members wishing to take their seats please come to the table? Laura Bird, member for Arbroath and Broughton Ferry. Broughton Ferry, in fact.
I take this oath only so that I can serve the people of Arbroath and Broughton Ferry. My first allegiance is, and always will be, the sovereign people of Scotland. I do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles, his heirs and successors, according to the law, so help me God.
Douglas Lumsden, member for Aberdeen South.
I swear by Almighty God that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles, his heirs and successors, according to law. So help me God.
No brave heart for me.
We now come to Andy Burnham, member for Makerfield.
Rome is saved.
I swear by Almighty God that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles, his heirs and successors, according to law. So help me God. Naughty boy. Naughty boy.
I didn't hear the
Turn the water into white.
We now come to questions to the Secretary of State for Education. Jim Dixon.
Question number 1, Mr. Speaker.
Well, just so far a minute, I think that we might have 1 or 2 left yet. Dixon. Question 1.
Glad to see so many people here for question number 1, Mr. Speaker.
I've been worried they all left. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm delighted to see the enthusiasm for our reforms to school food. We want to enjoy children eating tasty, healthy food at school, and that's why we're updating the school food standards for the first time in a decade and putting young people's voices at the heart of our plans. We'll publish the new standards in September alongside our record expansion of free school meals, driving down poverty and delivering a revolution in school food.
Jim Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know, looking at me, you would never guess that my children are now well past school age. But when they were at school, and that was long past Jamie Oliver's campaign against turkey Twizzlers, the school food served was still not as healthy as it should have been. So I am really delighted by the Minister's assurance that the government has consulted on the first update to school food standards in a decade. I am, however, just slightly puzzled by the phased approach to improving the drinks served in secondary schools through until September 2028. So will the government consider speeding up this timetable and moving towards alignment with primary schools so that we don't miss a crucial opportunity to improve the health of our young people?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Alongside updating the standards, we also want to support schools to implement them. That's why, alongside developing new governance and compliance proposals, it's right that we give schools the time they need to prepare and embed the new standards, including phasing some changes in secondary schools. The consultation on our proposals closed just over a week ago, and we will consider all responses carefully.
We're Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recently visited Ralph Allen School in my Bath constituency, and I saw how students were leading the way in improving the standard of their food. They have been creating a vegetable bed in an empty space. They have then are offering vegan and vegetarian choices. And I would really like to understand how will the department support schools in pupil-led improvements to their food.
I thank her for that really important question, and I'm really glad to hear of the fantastic example in her constituency. And I think it's really important that our approach to food is embedded right the way across the school curriculums, whether that's children planting their own vegetables in schools, and also children designing their own menus too. That's why, as part of our consultation, we've been driving forward with listening to young people's voices, and young people will continue to be at the forefront of our new school menus.
Flav Jones.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Without clear levers, accountability cannot...
Two. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Through the national consultation and local SEND reform plans, we're making sure that multi-academy trusts play a key role in SEND reforms. New national inclusion standards will create shared expectations for all schools around inclusive education, and the SEND reforms make clear our expectations that all MATs and schools work in partnership with local authorities to ensure the needs of every child in an area are met.
Clive Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Minister for her answer. Without clear levers, accountability cannot be guaranteed, and the Department cannot ensure that SEND reforms translate into consistent, high-quality support for children and their families on the ground. So will the Minister clarify what specific and enforceable powers local authorities will have to ensure that multi-academy trusts play their full part in delivering local area SEND plans?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So the government will be setting national standards for all schools, including multi-academy trusts. So national inclusion standards will be developed by an independent expert panel, and all schools will need to make sure that they are delivered. We are also introducing new inspections for multi-academy trusts that will focus on a range of levers, including the importance of inclusion in education. And through our focus on area partnerships, we're really clear that every player, whether that's schools, health services or local authorities, need to work together to deliver for children.
Ruth Gabriel.
Thank you, Mr.
Mr. Speaker, special needs specialists in my constituency, in schools in my constituency, have raised with me their concerns about the shortage of educational psychologists, and a mum of a profoundly disabled child that I met on Saturday raised her concerns about the shortage of occupational therapists. What's the government doing to address the needs of this very specific group of people with their additional needs?
Mr. Speaker, I really appreciate that question. It's absolutely at the heart of our reforms to make educational psychologists, occupational therapists, speech and language therapists far more accessible for students within mainstream education. We're investing £1.8 billion in a new Experts at Hand service. It will start from September. And as part of that, we're also investing £40 million into training up new educational psychologists and speech and language therapists. So we make sure we're developing the workforce to really ensure that all children have access to an inclusive education.
Mayo. Minister.
Mr. Speaker, under this government, apprenticeship starts by young people are up. We're going further and investing an additional £1 billion to support 50,000 more young people into apprenticeships with new foundation apprenticeships and £2,000 for smaller employers when they hire young apprentices.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. But there's no correlation between what the Minister says and what's happening on the ground. If you look at Broadland and Fakenham, in the last year, the number of apprenticeships have dropped by 20%. They haven't gone up. They've gone from 150 down to 120. So if the Minister thinks that more apprenticeships are a good idea, why doesn't he sign up for 100,000 new ones and support the Conservatives' New Deal for young people?
Because, Mr. Speaker, I think you should look at what people do, not what they say. And this is a government that is reversing the decline, the 40% reduction in apprenticeship starts for young people under the previous government. We are taking a range of steps, including supporting SMEs, including greater flexibility in the apprenticeship system, all so that we can create an extra 50,000 opportunities for young people to have apprenticeships.
Mr. Speaker, and I draw the House's attention to my register of interest as a governor at 2 education institutions and as chair of the all-party group on sixth forms. Could I ask the Minister about access to the apprenticeship register? Because in Stoke-on-Trent, great companies like the Spark Group are struggling to get that registration that they want so they can grow their offer to young people. They're limited by the £100,000 de minimis for subcontracting, but they have young people that want to take on the apprenticeships they're offering. So can he set out what this government might do to change that? And would he be willing to meet with me and the Spark Group so we can look at ways in which they can give the opportunities young people want?
I know that my honourable friend is a fierce champion for apprenticeships and technical education. Very happy to meet with him to discuss those matters further. But my noble friend, the Baroness Smith in the other place, the Minister for Skills, has taken a whole series of actions with the Secretary of State to reform our apprenticeship system, open it up and create tens of thousands of additional opportunities for young people. Here's what we need to do.
Number 4, please, Mr. Speaker.
State.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to say that this government is driving record investment in our schools, with the core schools budget increasing by £1.7 billion this year. This includes funding that allows us to reform the SEND system, training up our teachers, making our schools more inclusive and making sure that every child can achieve and thrive.
Sarah Coombs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Eton Valley Primary School in West Bromwich have enthusiastically embraced net zero, and the government has supported them by putting solar panels on the roof, a battery to store the power and EV charge points in the car park. That is already saving the school hundreds of pounds off their energy bills every single week. Will the government look to roll out similar schemes across more schools in the backcountry, which both reduces our carbon emissions and allows more money to be invested directly into teachers and pupils?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, we will. We're rolling out the GB Energy Solar Programme to around 350 schools and colleges. We're also unlocking private finance investment in solar and energy efficiency for schools and colleges, with pilots planned for later this year. I'm really pleased to hear of the impact of the scheme in my honourable friend's constituency. A school local to me in Sunderland recently shared that they had saved £4,000 this year through being part of it, which they're using to put on more school trips and more activities. Mr. Speaker, we are saving schools money on their energy bills. This will allow them to invest more in driving up standards and in teacher quality.
Mark Pritchard.
St Andrew's Primary School in Shifnal, my constituency, is about to see a multi-million-pound rebuild of the school, or a new build, in phases. Most of that money will come from the Department of Education, but not all of it. So would the Secretary of State commit to ensuring that the funding is delivered so that the school does continue to offer school places for the extra 25 places that are part of this scheme, and the 26 place nursery that's also part of this scheme. Before we've had full starts, this needs to be delivered, but we need commitment from the government.
I'm grateful to the Honourable Gentleman for raising what is obviously a very important case in his constituency. I'll make sure that I look into the concerns that he's raised, and if it's helpful for him to meet with the Minister to discuss that further, I'll make sure that's arranged too.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson, Munira Wilson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. With a growing obesity and mental health crisis among our children and young people, quality physical education has never been more important. Yet annual funding for PE will be slashed by a staggering 22% under the new PE and schools sports partnership network, with primary schools being hit particularly hard. And Mr. Speaker, to make matters worse, these cuts are being hastily rammed through midway through the school year, leaving teachers, parents and sports coordinators completely stranded. So can the Secretary of State look parents and teachers in the eye and claim that cutting sports budgets mid-term is giving every child the opportunity to get on?
Mr. Speaker, I agree with where the Honourable Lady started, which is that PE and sport, access to high-quality sports coaching, provision and resourcing in terms of capital investment as well in schools is incredibly important, alongside the work we're doing on school food to make sure that children get a great meal at lunchtime, in particular, alongside a huge expansion of free school meals. We have committed over £1 billion of investment in the new PE and sport work that we're setting out to establish that new partnership. But we are making sure that through that process, primary schools are supported with transitional payments, with support, and we're working very closely with leadership organisations to make sure that schools have all of the information they need as we move towards a new system, which has been widely welcomed by sporting bodies and other organisations as opening up opportunities for more young people. I'd be very happy to discuss it further with the Honourable Lady, because I think, Mr. Speaker, there is some misunderstanding about the approach that we're taking around transitional protections and support for primary schools.
Stop.
Question 5, Mr. Speaker.
Far too long. Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we are deeply grateful for the service of military families, and we recognise the additional pressures that military life puts on the education and family life of those families. This is an area we're working closely with colleagues in the Ministry of Defence to address, and schools receive service pupil premium funding to address challenges including mobility and family separation. We're improving SEND support for families who move frequently, including proposing new digital individual support plans and education healthcare plans to make those moves easier.
Will Foster.
Brookwood Primary School in Woking educates a significant number of military families because Army Training Centre Purbright is nearby. Those children have their education disrupted by their because of the nature of their parents' vital work in the armed forces. So in this Armed Forces Week, will the government look at what further support that they can give, including increasing the service pupil premium that has only gone up by just £20 in 2 years?
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for their question, and I'm actually visiting Garrison in North Yorkshire in similar circumstances to talk to families, to talk to schools about the particular pressure that they face supporting children with that high mobility. It's something we are really closely working on, as I set out, particularly through the SEND reforms, because what I've heard time again from military families is one of the biggest barriers for them is if there's an additional need, how hard it can be moved from place to place. And I've set out some of the changes we're making, but it's an area that we're looking closely at, and I'd be very happy to meet with him to discuss further.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This morning I had the honour of taking part in flag raising ahead of Armed Forces Day in Thurrock, in my home patch. And while I reflected that the impact of service is one of pride, there's also a big impact on the families of men and women who bravely serve our country, particularly on those with special educational needs and disability. So what measures is she taking to make sure that when a child with SEND follows their parent due to their military service, that they are not adversely impacted?
Mr. Speaker, I thank my honourable friend for her question. And as I've set out at the moment, it is far too hard to move SEND provision from place to place in the country. So the changes we're making, introducing national inclusion standards, national specialist provision packages, and digital individual support plans and EHCPs will make a massive difference in making it far easier to move provision. But we are absolutely consulting on this. I'm continuing to talk to military families and really welcome the engagement on this important issue.
Miller.
Mr. Speaker, in this Armed Services Week, I want to draw the Minister's attention to the issues she's just been discussing. I've heard too often from families in my area who are service personnel families that when their children need to move, the EHCP, which they've spent some time arguing for, does not automatically follow with their child. Not only does this disrupt the child's education, but it makes it much harder for that service personnel family to move together. Often the person serving has to move first. So can I implore the Minister not just to come up with digital solutions, work closely with the MOD to really address this crucial matter?
Mr. Speaker, I met a minister from the Ministry of Defence just last week. We were discussing exactly these issues. I've heard from service personnel that they've turned down jobs as a result of being worried about moving provision. It's a massive priority and it's something that we are working on.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Minister for all her work on the issues around SEND, particularly with service families, and for meeting me, service families and personnel through the work of the Armed Forces Community APPG. Those service families took so much strength from the fact that you were there, that the Minister was there to listen to them. Can the Minister commit that through all the future steps of the SEND reforms, that service families will be recognised within the work?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I would like to really thank my honourable friend and her co-chair for organising the APPG. It was a really impactful conversation. We heard some of the challenges that people have spoken about today of service families really struggling to navigate the SEND system. The people that I spoke to welcome some of the changes that I've set out today, but they also set out new ideas which we'll be looking at as part of our response to the consultation.
Question 6, please, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, the government recognises the essential role that small schools play in their communities, many of which are in rural areas. The school's national funding formula accounts for the challenges faced by small schools in rural areas by providing additional funding through the lump sum and sparsity factor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was deeply saddened to receive the news from the Minister last week that Corpusty School will close from September. Across North Norfolk, there are small rural schools just like Corpusty, and they're worried about whether they might be next to face closure. Research and guidance from the DfE for running a small rural school was conducted 8 years ago and published in March 2019. That's about to be 6 Prime Ministers ago. Will the Minister commit to undertaking new research and publishing up-to-date guidance so that small rural primary schools can be protected in future?
Mr. Speaker, I really welcome the honourable member taking the time to meet me about the situation in his constituency and the real pressure that falling birth rates are having on small schools. I've subsequently followed up on our conversation by meeting his local council and talking about how we can work in partnership to really support his constituency and the wider Norfolk area as they face these pressures, and happy to continue conversations about our priority as a government to support rural schools, which we are prioritising in funding as I set out.
Peter Prinsley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So small rural
on our conversation by meeting his local council and talking about how we can work in partnership to really support his constituency and the wider Norfolk area as they face these pressures, and happy to continue conversations about our priority as a government to support rural schools, which we are prioritising in funding as I set out.
Peter Prinsley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So small rural schools in Suffolk all face an uncertain future. I met with the brilliant Stephanie Hunter, head of Barningham School, and she explained the difficult problem of per-pupil funding in her very small classes. Now, I would like to see more affordable housing in villages for young families by changing the rural exception sites. But does the Minister agree that village schools have a very special place in the heart of our rural communities?
Mr. Speaker, I wholeheartedly agree with my good friend, who is a great champion for rural schools, and I do agree that they have a very special place at the heart of our communities. The national funding formula allocates funding based on a consistent assessment of need. The lump sum is particularly beneficial to small schools who are most reliant on the element of funding that's not driven by pupil numbers.
Bill Esterson.
Question 7, please.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we inherited the rat crisis and years of decay in the school estate. Labour is investing almost £20 billion in the school rebuilding programme to rebuild over 750 schools across England. Over 500 schools are already in the programme, with well over half already in delivery. We'll select a further 250 schools by early 2027.
Can I thank the Minister for his answer? Hudson Primary School in my constituency does a brilliant job. They are a family hub. They specialise in support for children with SEND and autism, and they have a nursery as well. But their building is 80 years old. It suffers from a high water table, which brings damp, it brings mould, it brings structural problems for the building and occasionally flooding as well. So will he give Nikki Craddock, the excellent head teacher at Hudson Primary School, and her team, and all of the children who they serve, the news that he will look favourably on their bid?
Order, please. Come on. I've got a lot of people to get in, Bill. Don't take complete advantage. Please, Minister, come on.
Well, I'd like to thank Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend, for the question, the advocacy that he has got for Hudson Primary School. He has spoken to me before about the excellent performance of the school and the head teacher there. We will be selecting the 250 schools for the SRP by the end of this year, announcing them at the start of next year, and it will be based on those schools with the most acute need in terms of their building state. But very happy to discuss it further with him.
Max Wilkinson.
Number 8, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, with permission, I'll answer questions 8, 16 and 23 together. Mr. Speaker, children with special educational needs and disabilities have been let down for too long, and we're determined to transform their experiences and their outcomes. We're working with young people, parents and professionals to create a system where needs are identified and met early, where schools have the training, resources and physical environments to be inclusive for all children. We'll end the postcode lottery for children with complex needs, with stronger national standards for specialist provision and a new role for the best specialist schools as centres for excellence.
Max Wilkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Recent events lead me to believe that we're going to have an in-depth discussion about regional funding inequalities in this country. With that in mind, can I draw Minister's attention to the F40 group of local authorities, and particularly Gloucestershire, within which my constituency Cheltenham falls. In the last couple of weeks, I've met Caroline Parker from Gloucester Road Primary and Rachel Penny from St Gregory's School. And what they've told me is that there is a particular problem with the provision of SEND in the F40 area. Will ministers meet with me so I can tell them in more detail about that problem?
Yeah. Mr. Speaker, I would be delighted to meet with the honourable member to discuss funding. As he knows, this is an area we're heavily investing in, £4 billion going into early intervention to support children with special educational needs and disabilities. But we're also looking, we will be consulting on how we fund special educational needs and the formula in the future. So very happy to discuss it.
Sarah Green.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Like local authorities across the country, Buckinghamshire Council submitted their SEND improvement plan on the 19th of June, but they won't receive a decision on deficit relief until the 21st of September, after the school year has already started. With a cumulative deficit of over 45 million already on the books, they're being asked to plan blind. Will the Minister meet with me to discuss what support will be available to councils like Buckinghamshire if that application is rejected, and to discuss bringing forward that decision timeline?
Mr. Speaker, many members across this House have talked to me about some of the issues with local authorities' delivery on SEND. And as a department, we are determined to hold local authorities to account and ensure that all local authorities are doing everything they can to support children and young people. We're putting in significant funding and support, but it's critical that that support really transforms things for children. So we are carefully looking at all of the SEND reform plans that have come back from local authorities and making sure that they are of the sufficient quality to really turn things around. But we will be working with local authorities who need more support.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've been campaigning for a number of years to get the special school at Bilton Woodfield open. It was first set to open in September 2024, then delayed to September 2025, and we're now been told it'll open in September 2026. It beggars belief a school that's had millions of pounds in building it and funding it is sat there empty when we've got a SEND crisis both in Harrogate and Knaresborough and across the country. So will the Minister meet with me, apply pressure to the school trust and the local authority, and make sure no further delays are made to opening of the special school and get it open on time for September this year, so we don't fail a further generation of SEND kids?
Mr. Speaker, I'd be very happy to meet with the Honourable Member and also the Honourable Member for Chesham and Amersham that I didn't get the chance to say. These are really critical issues and we want to see provision come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could the Minister provide an update on the expert at hands offer and particularly how that £2.1 million that will be given to my local authority in London Borough of Bexley can be used to support disabled children across Bexley, Heath and Crayford?
Mr. Speaker, we've set out guidance and investment for local authorities. I know local authorities around the country are busy building that offer. I was in Rochdale last week where there's amazing work going on with speech and language therapists in schools that has seen over an 80% reduction in waiting lists for children. So we are really excited about the opportunity to bring these vital experts, specialist teachers, speech and language therapists and many other directly into schools, and there is work going on, as we've heard, to start this for September.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm delighted that St Martin's Primary School in Scarborough is establishing a brand new targeted mainstream provision and centre, backed by funding from this Labour government. Does my honourable friend agree that our plans to deliver more TMP places will mean that the many, many children currently not in school in my constituency due to unmet needs will be able to return to school and resume their education?
Mr. Speaker, absolutely. We're investing £3.7 billion into creating 60,000 new specialist places, and I've heard from families how it's life-changing to have that provision in their community. Children who've been out of school, sometimes for years, are now back into education. And earlier we were talking about rural schools and some of those issues, and there's real opportunities to create inclusion bases in schools around the country.
Secretary Batty, Shadow Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a few months ago, TES reported that the government had frozen the high needs funding block which special schools rely on. Consequently, head teachers are warning that the government's decision means children won't get the support they need due to a lack of funding. The Minister may well point to the experts at hand service, but it isn't the same and doesn't come anywhere close to meeting what each school will have lost. So how can the Minister justify freezing the high needs funding block when the demand for special schools is rising, EHCP demand is rising, and the government's own reforms are years away?
Mr. Speaker, when we came into government, we put in a significant increase to the high needs block, precisely because we knew that investment was desperately needed into special educational needs and disabilities. And honourable members across the House will know that the current system has been failing for a long time. We're acting to reform the system, but we're also acting to invest £4 billion into early intervention, £3.7 billion into capital places, £200 million into teacher training, supporting local authorities with their deficits. This is something we're taking absolutely seriously. It's at the heart of our agenda, and we are acting where the previous government failed.
Chris Vance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a former teacher, I know that these SEND reforms are not just necessary, they're also vital for young people in my constituency of Harlow and beyond. Does she agree with me that SEND reforms in Harlow will be strengthened by MAT-level inspections and Ofsted's welcome on a new focus of inclusion?
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I very much agree that Ofsted inspections of multi-academy trusts are a really important lever in ensuring that inclusion is part of the decision-making of all trusts and all schools.
Neil Wilson, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. First, we heard that ministers were trying to rig the SEND consultation with pre-written responses. Now it has emerged that the DFE-funded charity Contact, which supports local parent carer forums, has issued guidance stating that parents may be blocked from these groups if they dare to publicly criticise government policy. So why are ministers so determined once again to stifle any criticism of their reforms by silencing the very families whose opinions matter the most? And will she ensure this outrageous guidance is reversed?
Mr. Speaker, this is just not true. And I think on this issue, I have spent time with MPs and families that they represent from across the House. And I cannot put into words the thought and care that so many MPs have put into holding surgeries, bringing groups together. I've talked to families with Liberal Democrat MPs, with Labour MPs, and met many Conservative MPs. This is an area where I think everyone is taking really seriously, where we have talked to families from all parts of the country with very strong views, and we are continuing to do that as part of our consultation.
Question number 9, Mr. Speaker.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I'll answer questions 9 and 12 together. Mr. Speaker, since entering government, we have turned the tide on the teacher retention and recruitment crisis left behind by the Tories. We've achieved over 70% of our 6,500 additional teachers target. There are now over 4,600 more teachers in our secondary and special schools, as well as our colleges, compared to when Labour entered government. We're also keeping our brilliant teachers in place, with the latest statistics showing one of the lowest leaver rates on record.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A Public Accounts Committee report published last summer found that the DfE not only lacked a plan for recruiting the additional teachers that Labour pledged in their manifesto, they also didn't understand why teachers are leaving the sector. So despite the Secretary of State saying that they're on track to meet an already revised and narrower target, this month's DfE report found that there are 1,907 fewer teachers overall since Labour came to power. So what is the Secretary of State doing? What further steps are being taken to recruit and retain our teachers?
Mr. Speaker, we have published that delivery plan that she refers to. I'd suggest she goes away and reads it. And when she does that, she will also be interested to know that primary pupil numbers have fallen by over 84,000 since last year. This is set to continue until at least 2030 because of the historic birth rate low that we see in our country. Mr. Speaker, this Labour government is improving teacher pay, improving workload, but also addressing the wider pressures that schools face, especially on child poverty. And I am incredibly proud that this Labour government will lift more children out of poverty than any government ever.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The working lives of teachers and leaders study last year showed that almost 3 in 10 teachers were expected to leave the profession in the next 12 months. And 90% of the people who have left or intended to leave cite high loads and stress as the most common reason why they're looking to leave. There's more teachers leaving the profession than coming into the profession. Can my right honourable friend say what her department is doing to try and ensure that we retain as many of these fantastic critical workers that we have in the profession?
I'm grateful to my honourable friend. I know he values the contribution of our teachers as much as I do, and we know that high quality teaching is the single biggest factor in terms of good educational outcomes for our children. We are improving pay, we are taking action on workload, and I'm also proud that we're doubling maternity pay, the first major change around maternity pay for teachers in over 25 years, something which is essential in a profession which is primarily female. But, Mr. Speaker, through ending the Tories' two-child limit, lifting 500,000 children out of poverty, we will ease the strain on teachers who, for too long, have had to step in where governments have failed.
Sir Ashley Fox, Shadow Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Secretary of State knows that the figure she has quoted to the House excludes primary schools.
Exactly.
The Labour Party manifesto promised to increase the number of teachers by 6,500, funded by their education tax. Yet this morning, on the DfE website, it says there are now 1,900 fewer teachers than in 2024. Daniel Kabede, the General Secretary of the NEU, says the overall fall in teacher number makes a mockery of this government's promise of increasing teacher numbers. He's right, isn't he?
Mr. Speaker, I'd suggest the honourable gentleman goes away and has a look at the pledge that we made within our manifesto, which is that we would recruit the teachers where we needed them most. I'm afraid to say, Mr. Speaker, that the birth rate in this country is at an historic low. We have over 80,000 fewer primary school children across our country. It would be madness not to take that into account. Now, I would suggest that he goes and has a word with his boss about this and about how the maths and the logic stack up. But given that she was in government when they crashed the economy, I'm not sure I'd recommend that.
Or a Kirk Smith.
Mr Speaker.
Minister.
As detailed in our post-16 Pathways implementation plan, we're creating coherent pathways, aligning learning with the skills employers need and improving progression. New V-levels, the expansion and improvement of T-levels and clearer Level 2 pathways will support young people's progression to higher study, apprenticeships or employment.
Every time I've been into Bucks College Group in Aylesbury, I've met fantastic staff who bring decades of professional experience to their roles and a really deep commitment to the young people. However, I know many further education colleges, including ours, are struggling with staff recruitment and retention, in part because staff pay is higher in schools. So as we do this brilliant work to expand technical education opportunities through FE colleges, can the Minister say what steps he's taking to ensure that FE staff salaries are competitive and FE colleges can continue to attract the best talent out there?
I'd like to thank my honourable friend for that question and for drawing the House's attention to Bucks College Group and the work that they do in her constituency. FE colleges have autonomy over staff pay. We've provided an additional 190 million for colleges and 16 to 19 providers for this financial year, which is broadly equivalent to the school's pay award. We've also set out new and very positive developments around FE teacher training support as well.
Graham Stewart.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I recently met Alex Miles, the Managing Director of Yorkshire Learning Providers, and Mr Speaker, it was a worrying tale that differs greatly from what the Minister is telling the House today, saying that established apprenticeship standards are being defunded and new product foundation apprenticeships that no employer in Yorkshire has asked for are being rolled out. So the Minister not accept that the government isn't getting this right, and when people like Yorkshire Learning Providers, who have no partisan points to make, they just want to make sure that young people can get into work with an apprenticeship standard which works for employers and themselves, that he needs to look at this again.
Well, I thank the honourable member for the question and the serious spirit in which he has asked it. We are providing £9 billion of funding for 16 to 19 programmes in academic year 26-27. There are a wider range of changes that we're making to further education support, to qualification routes and to apprenticeships to directly respond to the kinds of criticisms that he's referring to from providers and employers. And I do genuinely believe that the government's got that right. If there's particular aspects of that Alex Miles wants to write to me about, I'd be very happy to take a look.
Bradley Thomas.
Number 11, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Mr Speaker, we're committed to prioritising early intervention and making major increases in investment in SEND, investing £4 billion more over 3 years. This includes £1.8 billion so every community has experts on hand, £1.6 billion to settings for early intervention and over £200 million to train every teacher.
Bradley Thomas.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Looking out to 2028-29, there is a £2 billion gap between what the government says it's going to be spending on SEND and what the OBR forecasts SEND spending will be in that period. That will risk children across Worcestershire being forced to fit into a box that doesn't fit their needs. What steps is the government going to take to address this?
Mr Speaker, the government is investing in special educational needs and disabilities as I've set out. We've set out substantial investment over the next few years. We are currently consulting on special educational needs and disability reform as we will set out final plans of that reform as after we've carefully looked at all of those considerations.
Thank
you very much, Mr Speaker. Many parents rely heavily on SENDIAS services. We know that these services are free, impartial and vital for parents. Now, given that we expect the demand to increase on these services, how will the Minister ensure that local authorities have the necessary financial and practical resources to maintain the independence and quality of SENDIAS services?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I've heard from many families how critical SENDIAS services are. We're continuing to fund SENDIAS services, and in the consultation on SEND, we set out a question on how we can better support parents and what investment we need to put in to do that. So it's an area we're looking at as part of a consultation. David Smith.
Thank you, Mr Speaker.
We are investing almost £20 billion in the school rebuilding programme for up to 2034-35 to rebuild over 750 schools. 500 of those are already in the programme. We've got a further 250 to select that we'll do later this year.
David Smith.
Speaker, young people in my constituency in Berwick have been taught for over a decade in a crumbling high school, the only high school in the town in a wide surrounding area. Following sustained calls from families in Berwick, the Conservative County Council promised 5 years ago to rebuild Berwick Academy. Planning application has now been submitted after missing the 22 round. The school applied for the school rebuilding programme in April this year. So can I ask the Minister to reassure my constituents that Berwick Academy will still be considered for the SRP funding, even as works are scheduled to begin later this year?
Minister.
Despite those delays, Mr Speaker, I can confirm that the school will be considered for the school rebuildings programme, despite those delays, which were avoidable. And I'd like to thank him for his continued advocacy with me, both raising it personally on a number of occasions and writing to me on multiple occasions too.
Rachel Gilmore.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Tiverton High School has been on various lists for a rebuild since 1999. I'm genuinely grateful to the Department for Education for the work behind closed doors, which has gone on since my election in 2024. However, there is still a worrying lack of commitment in public from the department, and so I'd like to ask the Minister whether his department could commit now and in the House to write to me, Mid-Devon District Council, Devon County Council, with a full update on the specifics of the school rebuilding programme for Tiverton High School to provide the certainty that my constituents required.
Mr Speaker, yes, I can do that.
Bob Blackman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Question number 14.
Mr Speaker, anti-Semitism has no place on university campuses or in our society. Universities must take strong action to tackle anti-Semitism, including enforcing disciplinary measures and improving transparency. More widely, we're taking action across the education system, investing £7 million across schools, colleges and universities to combat anti-Semitism, ensuring for the first time that every child learns about the Holocaust, and I commissioned an independent review into what further action we can take to tackle this poison in our schools and colleges.
Bob Blackman.
Thank the Minister for that answer. The fact is that anti-Semitism and anti-Jewish hatred is rife across our campuses across the country. It is right, as the Minister has said, that it's up to Vice-Chancellors and principals to ensure that Jewish students feel safe on campuses. The sad reality is that a survey that's just recently been published shows that only 3% of Jewish students feel safe to report anti-Semitism. So will the Secretary of State then take the prompt action to make sure that Vice-Chancellors do their job? Those committing anti-Semitic attacks be expelled from universities, and indeed, if they're foreign students, they should be deported as well.
Speaker, I know the Honourable Gentleman has long campaigned on this issue and has a strong record on making clear his commitment to tackling anti-Semitism wherever it is found, and I share that commitment. I want to thank the the Union of Jewish Students for its Time for Change report. I spoke recently at a launch event attended by Vice-Chancellors, where I made clear that I expect universities to take action against anti-Semitism, which is completely unacceptable, where too many Jewish students on campus have been subject to harassment and intimidation. It is unacceptable. University Vice-Chancellors must act.
Jack Rankin, Shadow Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My honourable friend for Harrow East rightly highlights the scourge of anti-Semitism on our campuses. Against that backdrop, is it not extraordinary that the government have chosen to deny students access to the Office for Students Free Speech Complaint Scheme while extending it to everybody but students, which I raised with the ministerial team on the 20th of April? The Office of the Independent Adjudicator, the body students are directed to instead, is nothing but a legal dead end for students who are subject to discrimination because of their beliefs. What message does it send to Jewish students facing intimidation and harassment that their complaints are treated differently to academics and visiting speakers? And will the government introduce meaningful sanctions, including funding consequences, for universities that repeatedly fail to protect them?
Mr Speaker, I recognise the very real issue that the Honourable Gentleman identifies, and I think there is a commitment across this House to tackle anti-Semitism in all its forms wherever it arises. But I think there is a fundamental point of misunderstanding here. Students do have clear routes of redress, clear routes of complaint where things go wrong. And I am absolutely clear with university vice-chancellors and others that there can be no place for anti-Semitic hate speech on our campuses. Freedom of speech matters, Mr Speaker, in our institutions, but anti-Semitic hate speech is not freedom of speech.
John Glenn.
Number 15, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Mr Speaker, we're determined to reverse the declining rates of inactivity for children and the stark inequalities we see around the country. We've confirmed £1 billion funding for PE and school sports over 3 years to create stronger local partnerships to revitalise PE and school sports.
John Glenn.
I thank the Minister for that answer, but I visited Woodland School and Matthew Kipley 10 days ago. He's been there for 17 years and works extremely hard to make very limited resources work for the pupils, 60% of whom receive the pupil premium. Now, he tells me that £17,000 has been taken off the budget that he has set for this coming year, a really difficult settlement, and that's all taken from the PE budget. So could the Minister explain what's happening for this immediate financial year, where there is a shortfall across numerous schools across the country and many in my Salisbury constituency?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. So that funding breaks down into £580 million to build the new PE and school sports partnership network. And at the moment, we are seeing too many children who don't have access to sports, who aren't meeting the recommended 60 minutes of activity. And it's really critical that we build something that supports schools, like the one that he mentioned, with national bodies to provide those opportunities. 200 million is going into improved facilities, and the rest is going into a transition to support schools through the year before we build that new service. So there will be transitional support in place, but we will build something that is better for schools. And I'm really happy to have a discussion with him to clarify matters.
Secretary Battish, Shadow Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I say to the Minister, you can't do more if you're doing a 22% cut in funding. The whole nation is watching the World Cup. Millions of children have recently competed in their annual sports day, yet the government snuck out this massive cut in annual PE and sport funding during the recent May half-term. The Secretary of State said this was a misunderstanding. This is not a misunderstanding. It's a 22% cut, which will have serious consequences for millions of children, and it will hit the disadvantaged the hardest. Senior head teachers describe it as a funding cut dressed up as an initiative to boost PE and sport in schools. It's hastily rolled out. It's a cut that will hurt the poorest children. Why is the government doing it?
Hear, hear. Mr Speaker, only half of children meet the Chief Medical Officer's recommendation of 60 active minutes a day. The current system, though well-intentioned and despite huge efforts from primary schools, is not doing what it needs to do to turn this around. We know, and we've been talking to national bodies, that a partnership model that brings on the huge national resources we have, the energy from the World Cup, the different clubs that are out there, brings them together with local schools, is going to transform that investment. And this is £1 billion we're investing over 3 years. And I was in local government when the party opposite cut youth clubs, cut community sports facilities, and we are investing.
We come to topicals in room.
Number one, please, Mr Speaker.
Sarah State.
Mr Speaker, the safety of our youngest children is of the utmost priority to this government. Early years settings should be places where children receive the best start in life and are safe and happy. That's why we will provide Ofsted with additional funding to back strengthened safeguarding measures, over £4.5 million this financial year and at least £8 million in future years. This will mean an additional 3,000 unannounced visits a year, an increased number of inspectors for larger settings and more face-to-face registration interviews before providers open, alongside accelerating modernisation of Ofsted's digital systems. This builds on recent changes around whistleblowing so that staff can share concerns quickly and with total confidence. I'll be setting out further changes shortly because, Mr Speaker, nothing is more important than keeping our youngest children safe.
In room.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. This year, 2 of Devon's school food providers have shut down due to rapidly rising business and food costs. The Government School Fund Standards consultation closed on the 12th of June. So will the Secretary of State now ensure that funding for school meals is sustained and that procurement supports healthy, fresh and local food?
Mr Speaker, that's exactly our intention, and the plans that we're consulting on represent the first time in over a decade that this has been properly looked at to make sure that when our children are at school, the food is of the highest quality and is healthy and nutritious. And I've been really grateful to all of those who shared their thoughts through that consultation. I'm also delighted that from September, this Labour government will be delivering a huge expansion in free school meals, making sure that all families in receipt of universal credit will now benefit.
Adam Thompson.
Mr Speaker, a new Best Start Family Hub is opening in Cotmanay, bringing together support for families in one of the most deprived communities in my constituency and across Derbyshire. As the government rolls out the hubs nationwide, what steps is the Minister taking to ensure they improve school readiness and help close attainment gaps before children even reach the classroom?
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank my honourable friend for all he has done to secure that new hub in Cotmanay. Mr Speaker, all the evidence shows that children who start school on the back foot find it so much harder to catch up. While the party opposite gutted Sure Start and let school readiness flatline, this government wants the best start for every child. That's why we're setting a stretching target for record proportions of children to be ready for school, and why we're transforming early education and family support services with record investment and a strategic focus that has long been lacking.
Secretary of State Laura Trott.
Mr Speaker, the resignation of the Prime Minister this morning was a damning indictment on the record of this government over the last 2 years. Part of the Prime Minister's legacy will be teacher morale at an all-time low. New NEU data today shows that 72% of teachers believe the government has performed badly on education. Why does the Secretary of State think the country and so many teachers have lost faith in this government?
Mr Speaker, it's a funny old world where the Right Honourable Lady prays and aid the National Education Union, but there we are. Mr Speaker, I am proud of the action that this Labour government is taking on pay, on workload and addressing all of the many challenges that our teachers and leaders are facing, left behind by the party opposite, where we saw a shocking rise in child poverty, major social failure. The only policy, Mr Speaker, that she has is to cut state school budgets to give private schools their tax breaks back.
Laura Trott.
That's a load of rubbish. But does she think that she said she's proud of the action that they're taking on pay? But can I suggest that perhaps one of the reasons that teachers are angry is because they still don't know their pay? When this side of the House had to delay the teacher pay awards to this point in the year, the Education Secretary described it, and I quote, as a complete dereliction of duty. So why does the Education Secretary think it's one rule for the Labour Party and one rule for everyone else?
Mr Speaker, she left behind a pay award and zero funding to pay for it. One of the first things that I did as Secretary of State was to deliver that award in full, fully funded, something that she, when she was a Treasury Minister, totally derelict in her responsibilities. This Labour government will drive up school standards, will make change happen for teachers and for leaders. She says it's nonsense that she only has one policy, and that is to cut state school budgets to invest in private schools' tax breaks. Mr Speaker, it's true. It's all they've got. They've got nothing to say on education, nothing to say on how they will tackle the major challenges that we are dealing with, especially on SEND.
Sarah Coombs.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Forced adoptions were a shameful stain on the history of our country. I was very pleased to see the Secretary of State announce that the government will be apologising for the scandal. And does she agree with me that the campaigners who have worked so hard for so long to secure this decision deserve our thanks for bringing to light something that for too long was shrouded in misplaced shame?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'm grateful to my honourable friend. I agree with her, and campaigners have shown remarkable courage, bravery and persistence in bringing this shameful period in our country's history out of the shadows. Their voices have been central to ensuring that this history is recognised, and it is for this reason and because of their tireless work that this government will soon be making a full apology on behalf of the state to all of those affected. I want to pay tribute to the campaigners. Mr Speaker, it is impossible to listen to them, to hear their testimonies and not recognise that a wrong was done to them and that we have a responsibility to address that.
Ollie Glover.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On a recent visit to Stanford in the Vale preschool, I saw the great service it provides to children and parents. However, it is facing rising demand without adequate funding and resources. So what steps is the Secretary of State taking to support early years education providers in meeting demand for the 3 hours childcare scheme?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And this is a critical question because this government is determined to give every child the best start in life, and we're backing that commitment with record investment in early years, with £9.5 billion and huge ambition for the whole early years infrastructure, including Best Start family hubs and our early education and childcare review.
Jim Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In Kent, the County Council has adopted a community of schools model for the allocation of high needs funding, but schools in Dartford are concerned this has led to a situation where access to funding is unfair, inconsistent and unpredictable, and it's left them unable to plan for the future because they can't be confident about how much funding they'll receive. Would the Minister look at the model that the Kent County Council have adopted to ensure it conforms with the high needs funding operational guidance and the dedicated schools grant condition?
Mr. Speaker, officials are meeting with Kent Council to understand the model. We are in favour of schools pooling resources to support children with special educational needs and disabilities, but there has to be safeguards, and I welcome the opportunity to speak further to understand his concerns.
And that's
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. We have a shortage of music teachers in this country, and there was a system in place of bursaries for those taking music PGCEs, but after the numbers of students increased slightly, that bursary system was pulled, and we still don't have enough music teachers. Would the Minister consider please reinstating that bursary scheme, which would allow us to have enough teachers coming through into the system to give all the children in this country the music education they deserve?
Mr. Speaker, we review every year the bursaries across the system. There's a limited pot, so we look at where the need is highest, but we will review it this year, and we're also setting up a national centre for the arts, which will be there to support teacher training for music as well as wider arts, as it's so critical to our agenda.
Jill Furness.
Earlier this month, I met with Devon Andrews, whose daughter Cherish tragically passed away from suspected carbon monoxide poisoning while on holiday with her partner. In the wake of their passing, Devon is working tirelessly to raise awareness of the dangers of carbon monoxide and is partnering with local organisations to educate children and others. Will the Minister join me in congratulating Devon for campaigning to save lives and also ensure her daughter's memory is not forgotten?
Mr. Speaker, I thank my honourable friend for that important question, and I want to pay tribute to the amazing work that she sets out. Thank Devon for their leadership and extends my heartfelt condolences to the family. It's so critical that we keep young people safe, and I really hope that they'll continue to work with us to do so.
Ian Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The High Court found in April that the Office for Students had predetermined its decision against the University of Sussex, approached the investigation with a closed mind and acted beyond its legal powers. So what is the Secretary of State's response to that finding, and what steps is she taking to restore confidence in the regulator?
Mr. Speaker, since coming into government, we have reformed the regulator to make sure that there is a sharper focus on financial sustainability. There is a new chair who is taking that work forward. The case that he refers to covered many, many years, and whilst he'll appreciate the limitations in what I can say about the case, he should be assured that we want to make sure that we have strong regulation around our universities that is most effective in making sure that they can uphold their responsibilities whilst also remaining financially viable.
Julie Benz.
Mr. Speaker, I recently visited the Chances Family Hub, one of several hubs. It is indeed a very fine hub. One of several hubs set up by Cumberland Council to fill a need left by the Conservatives' short-sighted decision to abolish Sure Start. Will the Minister please assure Carlisle families that this government will ensure all family hubs receive the support they need to give children the best start?
For all of her hard work for her constituents, and join her in congratulating her council for their work. She's right to condemn the outrageous cuts to Sure Start under the party opposite, and she's right also that councils and voluntary organisations have stepped up to fill the gap. This government will have their back, not just through our £900 million investment, £3 million in Cumberland, but also driving the reforms needed to link up services and reconnect our communities.
Speaker, temperatures are forecast to exceed 35 degrees centigrade in Somerset this week, and some classrooms are set to breach safe working thresholds by as much as 10 degrees centigrade, risking serious disruption to learning. What immediate steps is the Secretary of State taking to protect pupils and staff from this extreme heat? And what dedicated funding will be made available to schools to retrofit for heat resilience to prevent repeated disruption to education in future heat waves?
Mr Speaker, we do recognise the need to make sure that as we refurbish and rebuild schools across our country, we make sure that they are well placed to cope with some of the fluctuations in temperature that we're seeing, sometimes the hot weather that we're experiencing at the moment. It's of course a matter for head teachers, for school leaders, as to how they manage that best. Schools, for example, can consider relaxing uniform rules during hot weather to make sure that pupils are comfortable. And also the Department for Health and Social Care, for example, recommends that pupils shouldn't take part in vigorous physical activity when the weather is exceptionally hot. But I trust school leaders to do the right thing to maintain well-being of both staff and students.
Steve Young.
Speaker, I recently joined a class of Year 5 pupils from St Peter's School in my constituency on a visit to the National Holocaust Museum in Laxton. I saw firsthand places such as this are vital to making sure that lessons about the Holocaust are absorbed by young people. I wonder if the Minister would therefore commit to visiting the museum with me in a local school.
Mr Speaker, I'd like to thank my honourable friend for his advocacy of the National Holocaust Museum. It plays a critical role in ensuring children are educated about the Holocaust. It's a key priority for the government, and I would, of course, commit to visiting with him and really welcome his work.
Alison Griffin.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My constituent Joanna has worked tirelessly to highlight the lack of a dedicated selective mutism pathway in West Sussex. Children are being left without the support they need. So will the Secretary of State commit to ensuring this gap in provision is finally addressed?
Mr Speaker, we are working with experts nationally to develop new national inclusion standards and specialist provision packages to set out the need we want to see supported within mainstream schools and specialist schools. I'm very happy to discuss this further with the honourable member.
Liz Twist.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. About 40,000 children each year acquire a brain injury, and they're currently recorded, if at all, under a range of broad categories. So will the Minister meet with me and UKBIF to look at how we can better record acquired brain injuries in a special category to do with their specific neurological needs?
Mr Speaker, I'd be very happy to meet with my honourable friend to discuss this. We've been talking to families of children with neurological issues, and it's a very important issue.
Helen Morgan.
Mr Speaker, schools in North Shropshire receive around an average of £6,460 per head last year, compared to a national average of around £7,910. And outcomes at GCSE and Key Stage 4 are consistently lower than the national average. So will the Secretary of State meet with me to discuss what resources can be put in place to improve outcomes for children in North Shropshire?
Mr Speaker, we are investing in schools and increasing an investment, and I would be very happy to meet with the honourable member to discuss their concerns.
Select Committee Helen Hayes.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I know that members across this House will have been sickened and devastated to hear reports of the abuse suffered by baby Preston Davey prior to his murder at the hands of his adoptive parents, in whose home he should have been safe. It is of concern that Preston was seen by several different professionals in the weeks and months before his murder. The Children's Wellbeing in Schools Act legislates for stronger safeguarding arrangements, including the introduction of multi-agency child protection teams in every local authority area. In light of the serious safeguarding failings in Preston's case and other recent cases of children who should have been safe in the care of the state, can the Secretary of State set out the expected timetable for implementing these reforms and how quickly we can expect to see stronger safeguarding practice consistently nationwide?
Mr Speaker, I'm grateful to the Chair of the Select Committee for raising this shocking case. Our thoughts must be with all of those who loved and knew Preston. And it is right that the evil abusers that committed these sickening and shocking crimes are now behind bars. And Mr Speaker, the House can be assured that we take this extremely seriously. It's why I have asked for independent experts to look at Oldham Council, Blackpool Teaching Hospitals NHS Trust and the Regional Adoption Agency to look carefully at all of the issues and concerns that have been raised through this process. The Child Safeguard Practice Review is commencing, led by the local Safeguarding Partnership, with the National Child Safeguarding Practice Review working closely to make sure it is of the highest quality. And in response to the question that the Chair of the Select Committee asked, Mr Speaker, it's our intention to roll that out by March. The Children's Wellbeing in Schools Act represents the biggest upgrade to child protection legislation.
reports and potentially neglected to stop what was a preventable death. My question is very simple for the Secretary of State. Amongst the army of health visitors, social workers and medics who saw baby Preston, why did nobody raise the alarm? And what action is being taken now to safeguard the welfare of those children under the care of Oldham Council now?
Mr Speaker, I've just set out to the House the action that we are taking. This is extremely serious. It is why it was an urgent priority for this incoming government to update legislation to make sure we do everything within our power to keep children safe. I've set out the position in terms of the action that will follow, and that alongside that, I am glad, Mr Speaker, that justice has been served. We can't bring Preston back, but we can make sure that we do everything within our power to stop this happening to other children in future.
Jonathan Davis.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. The St Ralph Sherwin Academy Trust runs a number of schools in Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire, but the Trust is facing extreme financial difficulties despite considerable extra support it has received from the Department for Education. We have, as East Midlands MPs, written to the Department about this, but if ministers could progress it to see if there's anything else that we can do, and also to look at the academy funding model more generally, because the financial risk that is built into it does undermine the education of our children at times.
Mr Speaker, I'm grateful to my honourable friend for raising this. I know many colleagues in the region with schools served by the Trust have raised similar concerns, and I'd be more than happy to make sure that he and any other interested members of Parliament are able to meet to discuss this further. It is clear that across the system there have been a number of failings where it comes to financial oversight, where it has come to accountability, and that's why we are taking action around MAT-level inspection, and why we will take further action to make sure that public money that is intended to benefit children in their schools and in education is not wasted in some of the shocking ways that we have sadly seen by the party opposite.
Lincoln Job.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Town Farm Primary from Stanwell in my Spelthorne constituency, their mini-parliament visited me here this morning. And they asked me some very good questions, including what's my view of the new member for Makerfield. But anyway, we'll leave that one where it is. Their head, Mr Barty, has just been given the OBE in the King's Birthday Honours List. These things do not come up with the rations. Would the Secretary of State please put on record her thanks to Mr Barty and all the team at Town Farm Primary School in Stanwell for the outstanding job they do?
Mr Speaker, I am happy to extend my congratulations to Mr Barty and the brilliant team at Town Farm Primary School, and I hope that all of the pupils had a wonderful visit here to Parliament. Of course, this is something that we as members of Parliament can encourage our schools to take up, because there is funding available to make that happen, and I hope that more children will be able to benefit from the investment that's gone into Parliament and the Education Centre too.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Secretary of State is aware of the challenges of population dropping in my constituency, which is leaving some schools closed. Can she advise what work the department is doing so that if there is a need to create housing on those sites for future pupils, that the department can more quickly move to changing the designation of education sites for other uses?
Mr Speaker, my honourable friend is right to identify this issue. I know it's something that she has long argued for in this House, both that we need to make sure we're managing declines in pupil numbers, but also that we're creating more social and affordable housing, including for her constituents. There are a number of ways in which we're supporting schools at the moment, where space is opening up, through expanding nursery provision within our schools, through expanding inclusion bases and more support around SEND. But we are looking very carefully, and I can assure her, looking very carefully at this issue of how we can make sure that sites are well used, both for educational purposes or where they may be able to serve other purposes into the future.
Ramsey.
Mr Speaker, primary school head teachers in my constituency of Waveney Valley tell me that the cut to funding for PE will have a real impact on opportunities for young people based on their budget calculations, and especially in rural areas. What assurances can the government give me that young people, especially in rural areas like Waveney Valley, will not be losing out on vital sporting opportunities?
Minister.
Mr Speaker, we're putting £1 billion over 3 years to build the new sports network. That's money that will be working with all sorts of different partners to support schools, bring resources together and put funding directly into school budgets. And we'll be setting out more plans to reassure primary school heads of our commitment to increasing activity for children and young people.
Final question, Bayo Alaba.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Like many colleagues across the benches of this chamber, I have heard from countless families let down by the existing SEND system. One particular upsetting case saw a bright young boy expelled from infant school due to mishandling of his complex needs. Thankfully, he later was re-enrolled thanks to the tireless work of his mother. Does the Minister agree that the reforms outlined in this government SEND white paper will support productive early intervention and create a fairer, more fulfilling school experience for every child?
Mr Speaker, I've spoken to families around the country who set out exactly that experience, watching their children fall further behind, having to battle for the support that they desperately need. Our SEND reforms are about putting early intervention in place, supporting children at the earliest possible point and transforming the system so parents no longer have to battle to get their children the support they need.
Let the front bench change over. We now come to the statement. Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy.
Well, Mr Speaker, I'm taking this statement on behalf of the Prime Minister. I spoke earlier today on the Prime Minister's record across the country, stabilising the economy, driving down waiting lists in the National Health Service, lifting 500,000 children out of poverty. But I want to start this statement, Mr Speaker, by paying tribute to his record on foreign policy, which is second to none. As Foreign Secretary, when we entered government, I saw firsthand the Prime Minister rebuild our relationship across the world. The EU reset we led put Britain at the heart of Europe once again. Embracing President Zelensky on the steps of Downing Street on one of Ukraine's darkest days was symptomatic of the leadership he's shown across Europe and in relation to the threats from Vladimir Putin. Principled, courageous, and on the right side of history, he drove investment to working people with 5 trade deals in 2 years. And when it came to the most sober decision a Prime Minister has to make on a matter of life and death and war, when others were pushing for the UK to jump headfirst into another war in the Middle East, Keir Starmer stood strong, stood firm and said, no, this is not our war. Putting British soldiers and the national interest first, he made Britain safer, rebuilt Britain's reputation around the world and drove investment and growth that will support working families in Britain for decades to come. Regardless of your politics, Mr Speaker, everyone in this House owes a debt of gratitude to the Prime Minister on foreign affairs. Mr Speaker, I will turn now to the specifics of the G7 summit Let me start with Ukraine. Mr. Speaker, once again, Russia chose to launch a huge attack on Ukraine on the eve of an international summit. In a show of their disdain for diplomacy, they killed innocent civilians in Kyiv and Kharkiv and hit the 11th century Pechesk Livrav, a sacred site at the very heart of Ukrainian culture. The G7 has a shared sense of outrage at Russia's conduct, but, Mr. Speaker, we also have a shared sense that this situation is changing too. Ukraine has a newfound momentum. They are increasingly able to push Russia back on the battlefield, and in Moscow, the mood is turning against the war. Almost 500,000 Russians have now lost their lives. Each month, they mobilise around 30,000 people, and each month they lose the same number on the battlefield with no progress to show for it. At the same time, the Russian economy is struggling and may already be in recession. And so we will seize this moment by continuing our military support, providing more air defence missiles and our biggest package of drones to date, financed with the profits of seized Russian assets. We're providing vital export finance to help rebuild Ukraine's energy system, and we're going further to increase the pressure on Russia's economy because we know the impact that this is having. My right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, announced 70 new sanctions at the summit, bringing the UK to around 500 sanctions on Russia this year alone, aimed at breaking up their military procurement supply chains, the illicit finance network